Hey Kings and Dragons, Dragon King 551, and today we're going to do a video about Caroline Forbes. Now many of you may say, what video are you going to do about her? Well, in other videos I have on legacies and stuff, I talked about, will she be in legacies? Will this happen? Rewriting of missed opportunities. And today we're going to talk about, hypothetically, Caroline Forbes' kids. And I'm not talking about Lizzie and Josie, I'm talking about other opportunities that they could have changed with Candace King being pregnant. Now, no one's business but hers in real life, but the way that the Vampire Diaries changed it so Lizzie and Josie could be born and still have an opportunity, for me, I find it disturbing and disgusting in my eyes with like the Rick relationship and the whole entire relationship behind that with Rick Saltzman and Caroline Forbes, because the way he insults her and stuff and says they're my kids, mine and Joe's and everything, and then he was always team vampire and helping the vampires, and then he turned away with them like Matt did and said the problems are the vampires. It's like, it doesn't matter if the problems are the vampires. It's the same way where Haley tried to take hope away from Klaus. It wouldn't have mattered. They still would have found the child and known that it was Klaus Michelson's daughter and everything. The other thing here is, like, it wouldn't have mattered if Lizzie and Josie were taken away, because the merge still would have been a factor, and then he would have had to call them back in to help with the merge. But then you also have to ask yourself, it doesn't matter if Lizzie and Josie are taken away, because the supernatural world is still going to be surrounding them regardless of what you do, because they're technically siphoner witches and everything. But with that being said, I want to talk about other opportunities with Caroline Forbes potentially having kids. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to a fan fiction that I'm working on, and I'll explain some of the ideas and stuff in that. So I'll be right back with that, and then we'll talk about all of the stuff that's happening with that. So I'm back, and this is where I'm talking about some stuff. So first off, I wanted to start it where this is going to be a Salvatore and Michelson's legacy story. So we'll start with the Salvatore siblings, and then I'll do a bigger one talking about it. So as you guys can see, I kind of changed some stuff around in it, and implying that, that Damon and Stefan have another brother. And this brother's kind of the middle child. He's not the oldest, which is Damon. But with this being said, I have like characters. So I have Melissa Benoist playing as one of the older sisters of Tyler Lockwood and stuff. And we'll get into all this Slytherin stuff later. But this is where I'm talking about certain kid stuff. So as you can see, I have like these siblings and everything else. But let's go right into what I'm talking about. And this is where I think the first opportunity for Caroline's kids could have happened. So this is where I've changed some stuff. I did the parents of Caroline Forbes Salvatore and Stefan Salvatore. And, so these are my actors that I'm choosing, and choosing Leo Salvatore, played by Sean Ryan Fox, and Mia Salvatore, played by Breck Bassinger, to, play those characters. And then I chose Jade Salvatore, played by Georgia Wingman, to play the character. The thing here is I chose her as saying that she won't be stuck in the prison world, for one thing. Two, in this story, the thing that I'm changing is to make it so that basically things like this are happening. So, basically I wanted to keep her in the story, and saying that with the Ripper gene, how it kind of gets passed down from Stefan and stuff. Now, a lot of people say that could have been Stefan and Valerie's kid, but I like to use it as Stefan and Caroline's kid, because she's blonde-haired and stuff and has blue eyes, so I felt like that was probably a good thing, because remember, Damon does have blue eyes. Now, as you see with these other cousins, I decided to do Blake Lively as Blair Gilbert, and I chose that aspect for the show because at the end of the day, what you have to realize is I don't really like Delana, and that's just me and stuff, and we'll get into all these other characters momentarily and other things in the fanfic. But that's pretty much what I did with these characters. And then, obviously, these are the love interests that are placeholders and other things that we'll talk about. This is where it's going to be the kids' love interests and talking about that. But here's some disclaimer part of the fanfiction. I don't want to go into all of it because this is really about Caroline and the kids. But yeah, all the Salvatores and Lockwood kids and Hope and blah, 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 that will all happen. And I'll talk about that in another video. And this disclaimer as well. And then obviously this is where, the opening happens for the show and stuff. But that's all I have for that and everything. And we'll be back momentarily. Alright, so that was my first thing where I decided to use like a fan fiction and give Caroline kids with Stefan. But there are other ways that this could have happened. First off, Stefan could have been a human and, of that. But in the fan fiction, in the disclaimer, obviously you'll see it is basically explaining that all of them became enhanced originals, like how Rick was. That's how they're able to procreate. I also basically are specifying that in that fan fiction, vampires can procreate with witches and werewolves, and witches and werewolves can procreate with vampires, vice versa, and all of that, because it's all part of the supernatural scheme and stuff. Yes, I'm using some of that Twilight aspect into this, but I said, fuck it. I personally think that vampires should still be able to procreate regardless of being the undead, because the thing here is that it just doesn't matter, their whole body still is flowing with blood, and as Damon and Stefan said, they can eat other things other than blood as long as they keep blood as part of their diet as well. They can eat french fries and stuff. And if they can eat french fries and burgers, what's to say that their DNA and how to procreate couldn't still be alive and part of their organ and stuff? Because in Twilight, they say there's blood in those organs that's pumping, and that's how they're able to procreate and stuff and everything else. So that was the first opportunities of how I think that Stefan and Caroline could have had kids, or Caroline Forbes a different way. Look, I don't hate Lizzie and Josie. I just don't like the way that it happened with Rick, because Rick was just like so much older, and it's just such a weird concept. If it's Rick and Valerie, I really don't have a problem with that, because Valerie is kind of like an older vampire and stuff. Like, she's over 100 years old herself. But with like Stefan and Caroline is completely different, because Caroline is close to like probably, if she gets turned in season 1 and we get to season 5 or 6 where she's in college, and she was 17, that's like 4 or 5 years there. She's close to 22, 23 years old, which I get it, because she's now an adult in her 20s, so it's not that bad, but it's still kind of weird because she's still kind of a kid in my eyes and stuff at 17, so it's just kind of weird and disgusting. The second option that I have of a missed opportunity that I will talk about in a rewrite of the originals is that the hookup in the woods with Caroline and Klaus, I feel would have been awesome to see, like, Hope have half siblings or something, with Caroline kind of being there for Hope once Haley and Klaus go out and die, and then also her siblings being there of Caroline and everything. But I also feel that the other thing that you have to realize is that would have been an awesome opportunity, but I get why they didn't do it, and, like, Haley was the only one because she was a werewolf, and they probably didn't want to see, like, Klaus, like, he hooks up with Caroline, he also hooks up with Aurora, and then by hooking up with both of them, now he's having more half kids left and right with other people and stuff, and that is implying other things. But I don't know, let me know your thoughts on how you would have wanted the rewrite of the Vampire Diaries. Would you have re-rolling Caroline Forbes kids a different way, or would you have kept it the way it is? So until next time, guys, don't forget to stay radical. I'll see you in the next one. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and let me know your thoughts on Caroline Forbes kids and how you would change the story to make it better. Would you keep Lizzie and Josie somehow, but then also have Caroline have kids before Lizzie and Josie, which they're older than Lizzie and Josie or younger than Lizzie and Josie? Personally, I would say they're older than Lizzie and Josie, and then it's Stefan and Caroline's kids, like in season 5, and then come season 7 is when Lizzie and Josie come into play and stuff, after Silas. This is how I'm doing it. Silas gives all of the Salvatores and people that actually fall in love the power to become originals and stuff. But anyway, that's all I got for you. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know your thoughts on all of this.